Hello and welcome to This Is Ibrox podcast. I'm your host, Ross Chalmers, and this is the warm-up as finally the international break is coming to a close. Tonight, I'm joined by Reiss, first of all. Reiss, how are you?
Yeah, good, thanks, Ross. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, actually. Not too bad. I've only got a 4-day week this week, so it's always a positive when it's like that. And Iain, I know you're doing great, right? Because we spoke about it the last couple of days, winning the treble, football manager with Rangers. You can't get much better than that. You must be flying.
Living the dream, mate. Living the dream.
That was me. I had to get it in there, right? I had to have a wee bit of a boast about Football Manager. It's just came out. Anyone else is playing it, involve the Rangers, get involved in the comments. Let's hear if anyone's been as successful as me and Iain. So tonight, we've got a pretty busy agenda actually for an international break. We'll have a chat about Ross McCausland and his kind of contract situation that's going on at the moment. There's been a few things with Matondo in the last couple of weeks as well about him coming back in. I think the whole experience thing with Philippe Clement, he's aware of him through his time in Belgium. So how will he maybe fit into the team? We'll maybe touch upon those kind of Ryan Kent rumours again because, supposedly he's been priced out of a move now. So I'll get Reiss and Iain's take on that one and whether they would actually want him back. There's also one with Kevin Van Veen, his agent coming out and saying that we were linked with him last year and there was interest. So again, I'd like to hear exactly what Reiss and Iain think about that one. And we'll have a wee look ahead to Aberdeen this weekend because, of course, Rangers are back and finally the international break is over. So, we'll just jump right into it. Ross McCausland then, a really good few weeks for him, making his first start for Rangers at Livingston, and then he makes his debut for his country in the same week. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic for him. Of course, his deal with Rangers runs out at the end of this season. He's been linked with a few clubs the past week now. Could be agent talk, for example, Atalanta, Roma, Brentford. Reiss, I'll start with yourself. How important do you think it is that Rangers keep a hold on McCausland, considering, he's just broke into the team, he's just starting to make an impact? How important is it that Rangers keep hold of these players once they've made the jump?
I think we've kind of briefly spoken about it in the chat, but I think the most important part of it is the homegrown quota and the Scottish quota. I think as fans, we collectively like to have that idea that somebody gets it or they're used to the domestic game or they're not need to adapt or anything. But I think there's that, plus it sets the precedent of just we actually want to play academy players. We want to utilise the academy and make sure that we are getting boys through to the first team and it's not just losing players down south or releasing boys because they're not good enough. You actually want to see that proven track record that you can then look at an academy director or anybody who's in the academy and go, well, actually it's doing its job. It's producing players, whether it be at Rangers or other teams. But I think you renew the contract even just to protect his value. I mean, we've seen how good he is, but in 6 months' time, that may have faded. The rest of the team might have got significantly better, hopefully. And at that point, he's maybe not good enough, that we are not as high quality as we all thought. But the value is still there. You're not losing a player for nothing like we maybe have before.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's likely to be I don't think it's going to be a deal that Rangers are going to have to break the bank for. I'm sure Ross McCausland will be looking for a salary that fits where he is now in this team. I'm sure he feels he's made the breakthrough now. He's proved his quality and he maybe feels he wants to push on for more first team opportunities. And I would imagine his agent is looking for a contract to match that. Iain, what are your thoughts on it then? And really, how impressed have you been with Ross McCausland? Because he didn't really have a lot of first team experience as he came in, but he's really shown his quality. I think especially in that second half against Sparta where he came on at Ibrox, I thought with the little time he had, he made such an impact on the game. I think looked great going both ways. He could go down the right, or he could cut inside onto his left and play killer passes. How impressed have you been with him?
Very, yeah. He's brought a real sort of freshness to this team, especially that position. I think our pods always are dominated by, we don't have a right winger, we need someone on that side, that's the new side, and blah, 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 for like years now, since Candace is the classic line. But he's brought, a freshness to that team. I think he's made Tav a bit better, having an actual winger in front of him, which has helped the team. I say that about like Ryan Jack a lot. He helps Tav, which helps us play better. I think McCausland's done that as well, in the kind of fleeting performances he's had. I'm maybe not getting too excited by him compared to what some people are. I don't know. I'm maybe just skeptical a little bit, but I think he's done good. He's done all right, but he's not like set the heaven fire, whatever that saying is. But I think he could in time do that. So if we lost him for free, it'd be such a kick in the teeth, especially as we're saying, he fits the quota. I know he's not Scottish, but I'm sure he's been here long enough that he ticks all those boxes that we need him to, kind of thing. So it'd be a major loss if he just went for free in the summer. So
yeah, I think it would be disappointing from both sides. I think for Rangers as a club, you've developed this player. I think they brought him in from Linfield. I'm not sure what age they've developed him. He's made his way to the first team, and then for him to just leave straight after he's kind of broke in would be a bit of a, of course it shows a pathway. I think Reiss touched on that earlier, which is really important for all academy players to see there's a route into the first team. And I think this is something we always have to realise when it comes to academy players. The majority of them won't make it at Rangers, but if they can see that there's a path to first team football and you can get that at Rangers to start with, then of course that's a positive. And I think for Ross McCausland, for his side, led to believe he is a big Rangers fan. So to get there, it would be disappointing if he felt that he couldn't get a contract that he deserves and he moves on to somewhere new. But of course, when it comes to player interest, and once you start getting top 5 league interest and Premier League interest, unfortunately, sometimes Rangers could be priced out, and Ross McCausland might have to make a decision for himself and his family and where he sees his future. There's a lot of good comments here, actually. Scott Hammond first, he says, we can't let McCausland go for nothing, then watch him thrive elsewhere. That would definitely be really disappointing for us. Paul McGarrigle, Rangers apparently have offered McCausland a 3-year contract. He needs to sign it or he will go. A 3-year contract sounds right to me, to be honest with you. I think they'd want to tie him down for quite a bit. Chris McFarland here as well. It's a great problem for McCausland and his agent. I hope he signs a contract extension with us and gets game time on the right wing. So something I wanted to just ask you both this, because I always like getting the opinion of just what your feeling is and whether you think he stays. So I'll go with you first then. Do you think the resolution for this will be that McCausland will end up signing a contract? Can you see something I was thinking about today when I was reading the interest? I wasn't really sure, teams like Atalanta, Roma, Brentford that were linked, they're all playing in top 5 leagues. I don't really think Ross McCausland is at the level to be going to these teams and making that breakthrough. So I don't really understand the move other than the financial aspect, which of course comes into anyone moving jobs, right? That's just the way of it. Do you think he will make a jump like that? Or can you just see him staying here and kicking on and signing a new deal?
I think the worry for me is that if you are Ross McCausland and you look at what Lewis Ferguson and Doig have done, going to Italy, doing well, getting international recognition and pushing on. I mean, Lewis Ferguson, for example, is now at least a £10 million player, probably a lot more than that, because he's got that game time. He's went to a club where he can be like playing week in, week out. If you're Ross McCausland, you look at that going, I could do that. I can get a bit of that. Whereas he's been here long enough that he knows it's hard to get in the first team. It's hard to stay in the first team. And I think we're all talking about like what Clement might do in January, especially what he'll do in the summer. We are going to spend money at some point. I said right in my first comment there, right wing is the kind of priority position for a lot of people. So I can see him being a bit, he's going to back himself, I'd hope, but at the same time, he'd have a bit of a worry. Like if somebody comes in to be the right winger, I'm straight away back in the B team fold and getting loaned out fold. Whereas if a team, I think Atlanta's a bit of a stretch, like you say. I think they're a bit sort of above the level of like your Bologna's, that kind of Verona, that kind of team. So I think if he was going to a Serie A team, he'd go a lower level so that he could play. Yeah. So Brentford, again, I don't think he would get a start at Brentford personally. Maybe it would surprise me, but I think that's a bit above him just now. So again, that can be B team football. So I'm not too worried about Brentford. But if a low level Serie A team comes in, I think he's going to do right for his career and could very well move on, sadly.
Yeah, and I think that's completely fair. And you made a couple of comments there about Lewis Ferguson. RFC 72 is saying very similar here. Nobody expected to hear Doig to do anything, even Ferguson. Look at them now. And I think that's a really fair comment. And probably that there's a lot of credit that has to go to the Serie A sides here, because they're recognising Scotland as a kind of pool of talent now. I think sometimes maybe Rangers could do a wee bit more of that and recognise the talent in their own domestic leagues. But we will come to that later. I've got a question on that. Reiss, what's your own thoughts on this? Can you see Ross McCausland kind of waving away all this interest and staying, or do you think he'll be tempted with a move elsewhere?
I don't know. Just to pick up on what you were saying, the teams in Italy I seen rumoured today was Roma and Atalanta. So I think that, as Iain said, it probably is a bit at a high level. I certainly don't think he walks into either team or their first team squad probably. So it might be easier to turn down than it seems. And listen, for For the B team games I've watched this season, Ross McCausland stood out a mile the whole time. So I've always kind of championed him getting into the first team now, and I just kind of hope that he stays, to be honest with you, because having seen him playing at the B team level, he is just really exciting. And maybe at first when he came into the first team, he was a bit apprehensive in that, but I think you are starting to see him really coming into his own now in the first team. But he's a clever player. You can tell that he's got a good pedigree of football about him. Like, he knows to make runs into half spaces and stuff, like Iain says, that probably helps to have behind him. So I'd like to see him stay. And to be honest with you, I reckon he will.
Yeah, you made a really good point there in terms of pedigree, and I think something I always say about young players when they come into the first team is if they don't stick out or they look out of place, then there's talent there. Do you get what I mean? It's looked very comfortable with Ross McCausland any time I've teamed in the first team, and that's a compliment in itself that he's just slotting in and he's doing what's required regardless of the manager. So he deserves a lot of credit for that. I'm going to stick with you here then, Reiss, because you've touched upon your kind of you're turning into our kind of B team correspondent, right? So you're always going to get asked these questions. So I feel you're asked this all the time, right? But it's relevant at the moment. Do you see, obviously with Ross McCausland pushing through, is there any other players you see in there other than the obvious ones, right? Bailey Rice, of course, I'm sure will break through at some point, right? That's maybe just my opinion, right? I'm a bit of a fanboy when it comes to Bailey Rice. Like, looks like a superb talent. You've obviously got Zach Lovelace, made a really good impact at St Mirren. Is there anyone else you see that's... Because let's be honest, Ross McCausland through the years was never talked about as being one of the ones that was ready and to break through, and he's came out of nowhere, really. Is there anyone else that you're potentially going to foresee breaking through?
So before he went to Queen's Park and got a pretty terrible injury, I think Jack Harkins could have probably slotted in at right back pretty comfortably. There's obvious ones like Leon King, even Kieran Wright I've been really impressed with, but we've got about 4 really good goalkeepers. Aaron Lyle's very, very technical and quite attacking with the ball. Cole McKinnon seems to be getting quite a lot of recognition. He wouldn't have stood out to me personally, but he seems to be quite highly rated. But alongside McCausland, I would probably say Aaron Lyle could make the step up, but again, probably a bit of development needs to go there. And James Graham, who's on loan at Alloa, I really like James Graham. He's my kind of player, to be honest with you. Just very quick, nippy, kind of playing the last shoulder sort of striker rather than hold it up and link it in. So I like James Graham as well, but other than that, we'll just need to wait and see. I think for a lot of the B team guys, it is a case of you kind of need to wait in a bit of a catastrophe at the first team level or a bit of a shortage. Like we've seen a lot of wingers being sold in the summer, which probably hasn't benefited the first team as a whole, but has benefited Ross McCausland's progression and got us to the point where we are today. So there'll be a few waiting on that kind of happening in the future.
Yeah,
jump in. It's just jump in. Like you said, and it's spot on. McCausland wasn't talked about at that high a level. Like he wasn't with like Leon King, Devine, Lowry. He wasn't quite there. He was always known, but never there. Like I say, so the fact he has came in, done well, and we're now having this kind of conversation, like this pod's not dedicated to him, but it's mainly about him anyway. So that must say a lot for how much talent there actually is there. It's just giving it that chance. Obviously, not every player's going to make it. That's a fantasy, but if you can show that McCausland maybe wasn't quite there at some point, but now he's 20, matured a bit, maybe buffed out a bit, he's now good enough for the first team, then maybe there is more there. They just need that wee step up.
100%. I think that's one of the benefits of the Best v Best programme. I know there's a lot of pros and cons for it, and personally, overall, I don't know that I'm that much in favour of it, but like they played like Swedish and Belgian first teams at the start of the year, alongside playing the likes of Man United 23s and Everton 23s, Blackpool. They did play first teams from foreign leagues, so they are getting that experience of playing against men and getting used to having to adapt to maybe not being the most physically demanding person on the pitch or being at an equal par with everybody. So it's getting used to using your body and stuff like that the players are ready to step into the first team, and I think we've seen there is definitely a really high level there. They beat Morton in the Cup.
Yeah. I think there's both sides, isn't it? The club have to be willing to give these boys a chance, but also when they are given that chance, they've got to grab it. Ross McCausland's grabbed it. He's went with it. I think Alex Lowry, I think, in stages over the last couple of years has showed the talents there. I mean, I can't remember who he actually played in League Cup. That was it, Queen of the South. I can't remember. Can't remember, but he obviously came on, he scored, he done really well, and he never really just kicked on enough. Of course, he's out on loan this season. I've seen a couple of comments, people referring to him in terms of his loan spell. So hopefully he comes back a better player as well. I'm pretty sure when we talk about kind of who's mentioned the most when it comes to the B team, Alex Lowry was always the one mentioned the most in the last couple of years, right? I think there's a lot of expectation on him. But there's a lot of other good comments here. RFC72 says Aaron Lyle. Marco Negri's eye says Reiss should have been that start 11 weeks ago. I mean, I seen him in that B team final last year, and I would probably agree with you. He was superb that night, and ever since I've wanted to see him at first team level. But yeah, there's a lot of good opinions in there, and a lot of people agree that the B team, it's all about these boys getting their chance and ultimately taking it. And Ross McCausland has. So let's hope he stays here for another couple of years, develops, and then we'll see what happens if players are striving to get to the next level. Then Ross McCausland won't be here for the rest of his career, but I'd like to see him stay here for a bit and develop a wee bit more, and ultimately Rangers get a wee bit more out of him. That's what I'm really looking for here. So we'll move on now. Rabbi Matondo was really something I wanted to talk about tonight because he made such a positive impact under Michael Beale. When I don't think a lot of people seen it. I think a lot of people were saying this summer that this was a player, Rabbi, we had to let go. Really, there was no room for him. And I think by the end, before he got injured, I think he was the talisman, wasn't he? Like everyone was looking at Rabbi Matondo to make an impact, which surprised me, to be honest with you. But yeah, he's coming back from a pretty bad knee injury. I think we're all well aware now that Philippe Clement has seen him in his time in Belgium. I believe he was man of the match in the last Bruges derby for Philippe Clement for Cercle Bruges. I think he was man of the match that day when they won 2-0. So I'm sure he's well aware of the player and probably feels that he can get something really, really positive out of him for his Rangers team. Iain, I'll come to you first then. How do you see Rabbi Matondo coming back into this team? Because I think his form before his injury probably says he should be pushing on, on that door to get back in. Can you see it being as easy for him? Because again, you've got to look at it. Abdallah Sima on that left-hand side is absolutely flying. So it's going to be difficult for him to get back in the team, isn't it?
Yeah, if you're building your Rangers team right now and putting like your first name in the team sheet, Sima's right up there. So it probably comes down to whether there's a formation change in there, whether Sima can move up front, or whether it's just a case of giving Sima a rest now and again to let Matondo come in. I think my thing with Matondo's always been he's great coming off the bench, brilliant running at teams who are tired, but starting games, not so much. Not seen it enough, or very much at all anyway. So if you've got Sima starting a game, playing 60, 70 minutes, then bringing Matondo in, especially the first few weeks he's back for injury, that's a dream setup. I think Matondo on the right never really worked for whatever reason. Same idea as Kent, just doesn't work cutting into that side, like from a stronger foot onto the weaker side. So ideally he would, because then I think Sima and Matondo either side is such an attacking, pacey, threatening attack. But like I said, I don't think either of them work on the right-hand side really. So unless Clement's got some kind of formation switch up coming or two up front, maybe Sima moves up there kind of thing, I think it's more impact sub-status for him. But it's good to have him back. I mean, we're so lacking wingers. Obviously, Wright got injured. We're now talking again about McCausland, how important he suddenly became in this team. So another winger coming back, it's a big plus anyway.
Yeah, it's a big plus considering who we play now, isn't it? I mean, you look back to these podcasts early on this season when Michael Beale was trying to kind of play that narrow system and we don't need wingers, but that's why we've not brought any in. And then it came to a point where we were desperate for them. So it's good to have, a selection to pick from now. And Matondo is definitely someone I think will eventually break into this team under Philippe Clement. How? I'm not sure. You mentioned it there and potentially moving Sima up front. Does he become that kind of rotation with Danilo? Dessers obviously moves back a slot again and he's very much, sitting waiting for his opportunity. Reiss, how do you see it then? Can you see Rabbi Matondo coming in and he can only play on the left? Would you like to see him tried again on the right? I think there was one game he played on the right under Van Bronckhorst, I believe, away at Hearts. I think they won 4-0 that day and he was actually really good that day, but that's the only time I can recollect him being good on the right. So is he someone you'd like to see brought back in, or do you think he'll just have to wait for his opportunity again?
No, I think he definitely should come back in. I think I would have him out on the right, to be totally honest with you. I think he's better than just about any option I can think of off the top of my head now.
Even Scott Wright?
Being
Read you like a book, man.
Aye. To be honest, it is tight. I actually really rate Scott Wright. I think I would definitely have him out in the right wing. I think because he's right-footed, like Iain says, it's maybe just a case you get Tav to underlap rather than overlap, and then he's got that space to get down the right-hand side on his right foot with the knowledge that he's got kind of somebody behind him, or just don't tell Tav to overlap and kind of hang back his run, because he doesn't always have to come inside. I think that gets a bit predictable anyway. We've seen that with Ryan Kent, but he's very, very technically able. Like, he's brilliant for taking on a man. That's what I quite like about Rabbi Matondo. As much as he might lose the ball, he's good at taking on a man. He will try it. And if it comes off once, it could be what you need to just kickstart a game. Because if it comes off, say, in the first half and you get an early goal, you go 1-0 up, second half, a team come out, you get a bit more space in behind, you go and win 4-0. It could be what you need at times, especially when you're playing against a low block.
Yeah, I think that's ultimately why Rabbi Matondo is at this level at the moment, to be honest with you, because he was so highly rated when he was younger. I think he moved from Manchester City to Schalke for around £10 million, right? So it's a lot of money. I think at the time maybe he was only 18 or 19. So clearly there's been a lot in him at an early age. I think what lets him down at the moment, and you made a really good point there, Reiss, is his final ball. It just doesn't seem to have enough of that. I think there were stages, even when he was playing well there, that I know he scored a couple of goals, but he just, that final action that you need sometimes as a winger, it was lacking. And I think we've all had the frustration over the last couple of years with Ryan Kent, because we all felt the same thing. He would do maybe all the hard work outside the box, he'd get into the box and he would sky it. So that is probably, there's a wee bit of the Ryan Kent playing on that. But I think there is a genuinely good player in there. I think Philippe Clement is probably going to enjoy working with him. And I think the right wing could be an option. There's a lot of people varying opinions on this, actually. There's Albert's legend here says, was Matondo not brought in to play right wing? Maybe remembering wrong. I think at the time he was brought in to play right wing, to be honest with you, but I think we all realised quickly he wasn't the best at it, but that doesn't mean he can't develop at it with a manager like Clement, Chris McFarland, Matondo left wing, Sima right wing would be fast as fuck. So yeah, I agree with that one as well.
Makes a change, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does make a change because we've been pretty slow at points this season. Robertson, he prefers the left to cut in on his right foot, and I think that's how most wingers play these days, don't they, with the cut inside. So it's going to be an interesting one. Maybe just before we move on with Matondo then, because I do want to actually touch on this. Sima, and I'll stick with you then, Reiss. He's been so good on the left-hand side. But I have seen a lot mentioned over the last couple of weeks about him potentially moving centrally. You might get more out of him. Do you see that as an option for Sima, or do you think his best work is going to be off that left?
I think personally for us, he's more effective out wide. I think he's got that one-on-one ability that he's able to run a man, he's able to stand you up and then just have that change of pace that he drops a gear and he's past you. I don't think you get that centrally from him, where it's more congested. Like, he's got two centre halves to deal with rather than one full back at that point. And then if you do try and double up on a winger, you're drawing somebody out for the midfield, so you've got a bit of space in there. So I think he's so much more effective out wide. I think he could play centrally, don't get me wrong, he's definitely got the... Saying that, I don't know that he's got the consistency in his shooting ability. We've definitely seen him score a few worldies, but they're a bit inconsistent, so... I think he has the ability to play centrally, but for me, I think he's more effective for us out wide just because of that take-on ability and just the speed that he's got, and he's more likely to get space out wide.
Yeah, I think I would actually agree with you on this one. I think from what I've seen from Sima on that left-hand side, his 1v1 ability is something I don't think I'd want to lose, and you don't get as many opportunities for that when you're up through the middle. So, of course, it's maybe more important to have a little bit of pace behind you when you're through the middle and you potentially beating the offside trap, things like that. But I really like his physicality out there, Sima, and that kind of diagonal from Connor Golson, which we've seen over the years for Ryan Kent, and it worked so much. You've definitely got someone there in Abdallah Sima that can benefit from that as well. So I'd like to keep him out there. Going to move it on now. I'm going to talk about Ryan Kent, right? And it's funny because Robert Robertson is well ahead of the game here. Robert Robertson might have read my agenda before this kicked off. So, right, lads, the Kent conundrum, yes or no? For what it's worth, never, right? So he's making his point clear pretty quickly here. Start with yourself then on Ryan Kent. Supposedly, Rangers have been priced out of this move now. I think Fenerbahce are looking for Rangers to cover the vast majority of his salary. I believe he's up to around 40, 50 grand a week now, which is something that probably explains why he moved on from Rangers, right? Because Rangers were never going to pay a salary of that size. Just simply, is Ryan Kent for you? If you had the opportunity to bring him back, would you do it?
I don't know.
You can't sit in the fence. You can't.
My
You've got
heart
to
says
pick.
yes. Like when I think Kent, I think like Dortmund away. I think the Old Firms. I think he was the main man for us for so long. But then I try and like pull myself away from like the emotion of it. I think we've been there. It didn't end too pretty. It depends how it was structured. Like if it was a loan with no obligations in it, just a simple loan, see how he gets on. I don't think we take much risk in that. He comes in, he does brilliant. We try and move forward and keep him in the club. If it goes to pot, see you later. I think that's a kind of win-win for everybody. Obviously, if we're priced out of that, fair enough. I think he probably is on like your 40, 50k now. It's the same idea as when we took Lundstrom on. You take the free transfer, so you bump up the wages a little bit. Makes sense. It's just common these days in football. So I can imagine we might be a little too like stretched that kind of budget, and it goes that way. I wouldn't want to pay or I wouldn't want to make Kent our highest paid player. I don't think it fits the club at this time. And like I say, we've got Sima on the left. We've got Matondo in coming in, who, like I say, I would rather see on the left than the right. I just don't think it's a priority position. And if we're trying to like be smart with money and these kind of things are always going to depend on who you get out. But if we sold Matondo, for example, for 3-4 million, Kent, you're a perfect guy to come in and sort of battle with Sima for that left-hand side. But I think we'd be more focused on a right-sided player, a centre mid, maybe just a few different positions. But Kent's maybe not the dream idea just now. The romance is lovely of it. It could come back and save the day and score on Old Firms again, take us through Europe again. But I just think it's just not the one right now, sadly.
Yeah, I think I've really been caught with the romance in this one, to be honest with you. I think if you look at it logically, I don't think the deal makes a lot of sense, especially with the way Ryan Kent left. There was a lot of baggage. The salary is on now. There's just something in me because of that presence of Philippe Clement. I don't know what it is. I just have a feeling that Ryan Kent would thrive under a manager like that. I think it's just unfortunate that he's missed him by a year. I mean, imagine you brought Philippe Clement in this time last year and he had those last 6 months with Ryan Kent. Could it have been different? Could he have stayed? Maybe. We'll never know. That's, again, the romantic of me. It's all coming in now. There's a lot of good comments on this, though. Differing again. Sharpie Staunch said, remember what Kent was like under Gerrard. I think Clement would get him playing. Scott Hammond, Kent's had his chance. No for me. And Chris McFarlane, I used to love Kent, but he was so bad last season. Was happy to see him go in the end. I think that's fair. I think that's where most people got to. But Reiss, curious on your opinion on this. You might come flying at me here and tell me we've got to get him back in and pay whatever salary going. What's your thoughts on it?
See, to be honest, I'm probably in the absolute opposite camp. I don't really want him back. I really don't want him back. It's not that I don't really, it's I really don't. For me, chucked it the last year, we've very rarely ever seen output from him. I think time has kind of developed that fondness with him again, particularly because we've not replaced him. And I think that it was one of his Fenerbahce games, one of the first ones. I watched the highlights package and I was watching it and he was terrible. Terrible, right? But for the first time ever, I was actually able to watch him and not feel like I had to defend them. And I was able to watch him and go, wow, now I see what they were saying. Wow. Very, very poor. He constantly came like horizontal. He was never progressive. Now that is potentially where Clement could just totally evolve his game. See, because we've stopped playing vertical passes, not horizontal, sorry, or lateral passes as Clement used the phrase. If his dribbling wasn't so like horizontal, he would have been amazing because he had like one of the furthest ball carries in the league. So he was definitely carrying the ball for a long period of time. But if you looked at carry progression, whereas like Sakala was massively high because he just charged at goal, Kent's was like a massive drop off, which tells you he was just genuinely going sideways with it all the time. There was no like breaking through lines or anything. And the whole way he left, Kyle brought it up in the pod last week. This kind of send off the five of them got when
club suit thing,
Scott Arfield did the banners and that, and Ryan Kent turned up like he was in a corner in London. Like it just, genuinely, he turned up like a roadman or something, and I was looking at it for the stand, just going, "Mate, come on, like somebody should have had a word there," or that. It was just the biggest, like, I don't really what I'd rather have left that 6 months ago that you could have ever seen. Plus now with the wages, and I think he's just burned his bridge. I don't think there was ever the output to back up the fee, and certainly in hindsight, when you look back at it now, I don't think there was ever the output to justify what we put up with last season either.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I felt personally attacked in that response there, Reiss, when you said you were watching them, you felt you didn't have to defend them, because that was all I felt last season. Every time I was coming to this podcast, I was trying to defend him. I think I was valid with some of the points, but maybe I stretched that a bit too far, and he did just have a woeful season last year. And I think after that, I can't remember if it was the Scottish Cup semi or the League Cup final. I think it was the Scottish Cup, and he was horrendous that day, and that was when I changed. I was like, it's just time to, regardless of whether I think there's a good player in there and he can be developed and you can change his game with the right manager or whatever, I think it's done now. We just move on, and I think that's completely fair, and I can totally understand why most fans just feel it's best to let it go and move on as a club. And to be honest, I'm finding it very difficult to disagree with that, even though I'd like to, I'll be honest with you, because I did love him in his early years at Rangers. This will be a quick one as well. There's more a kind of overriding topic I'd like to touch on with this one. But I did see a comment about it earlier, actually, and if I can find it, I will bring it up. I think it was it was Graham Brown saying, hearing Van Veen is under consideration. I'm sure there was another comment of someone potentially saying it would be a good move. It was actually Stuart Henderson. Van Veen on a 6-month loan, guys. Now, this is an interesting one, because I wasn't actually going to ask the question tonight based on would you bring him in now. I was going to ask your opinion on that. His agent came out in the last couple of days and said that Rangers were interested in the player in the summer before he moved to Groningen. Come to you first on that one. And I'll ask you both questions because it's been brought up in the chat here. Would you have brought Kevin Van Veen in last summer? And would you bring him in now? Simple as that.
No. I mean, the argument for it, I can totally get it. Like, he done so well at Motherwell. Like, was it 20 plus 25 goals or something for Motherwell? That's ridiculous numbers. So full credit to him. But I just don't think it matches where we want to go as a club. I mean, if it was a case of we were paying Roof off, for example, and had to fill that like fourth option up front, we could do worse than Kevin Van Veen. So I'll say that straight off the bat. He wouldn't be a terrible, awful signing, but it would just be so like uninspiring. I think I said this in the summer, I'm sure, on a podcast. It just, you're trying to think of teams or players that can take you forward, take you into Europe. You want to bring on an Old Firm game, stuff like that. If I saw Kevin Van Veen warming up on the sidelines, I'm not getting off my seat kind of thing. It was quite a lazy room at the time. His agents probably just tried to get a bit of interest going in him. I think he scored 5 goals this season. Nah, just move on. Try and phone Shanklin first. Not for me. No.
Yeah, do you know what? I'll just say it right now. Yeah, I'm completely the same. I wasn't interested in Kevin Van Veen this summer, and I'm no interested in him now. Interestingly enough, I don't know if it was himself that said it in the interview, or it was his agent, but I think they were saying that essentially they understand that Kevin Van Veen doesn't match Rangers' profile in terms of a striker they would be looking for, and probably age and things like that comes into it. So I think they're well aware that Rangers probably weren't going to make a move. It doesn't surprise me if agents were being chatted to about potential players. It happens all the time. It doesn't necessarily mean the club are going to bring you in. That's just football, the way it works. Reiss, I can't move on without getting your take on it. Are you Kevin Van Veen? Would you bring him in?
Nah, the guy's 32, and I literally just looked it up there. He scored like 41 goals in 183 games for Scunthorpe. So if that's the kind of level he's at, nah, not for me.
Yeah, I think it's one that brings us on to another topic. Just before I get there, I just want to say thanks to Chris McFarlane. He donated £3 there. I'm on the jersey. It's probably because he's seen me getting really upset about me accepting Ryan Kemp wasn't coming back. So thanks, Chris. I really appreciate that one. You've made me feel a lot better about that one. But yeah, there was something I wanted to touch on here when it comes to Kevin Van Veen. I think we have discussed it a lot in the podcast before, so we maybe don't have to go into it in detail, but I think it comes along at a good time. You've seen Kevin Van Veen linked in the last couple of days. Lawrence Shankland has been linked a lot in the last week or two based on his performance at Ibrox that day. He done really well. He looked okay in the was a semi-final, the League Cup as well. Of course, he gets that goal for Scotland late on, so everyone's talking about him again. Reiss, I'll come to you first then. Maybe not just Lawrence Shanklin, right? But just in general, SPFL players, domestic players, is there anyone out there that you would be looking at in terms of Rangers should be interested in? Because I think we all agree as fans now that we maybe have to go over this not looking at domestic-based talent. You look at Cyril Dessers and Sam Lammers this season and the money we spent on them, not really hit the ground running, let's be honest. So could we do worse than looking at domestic-based talents like Lawrence Shanklin or a Kevin Nisbet before he moved to Hibs, Josh Doig, whatever? What's your thoughts on that?
100%. I think there's not been many in my lifetime, but every kind of successful Rangers team that have won titles have had that sort of fill of the squad that was predominantly Scottish or came from within the league. You think so, like the likes of Novo, Canigia, Stephen Thompson, Chris Boyd, Stephen Naismith, all came from SPL, whether they were Scottish or not. And even the likes of Scott Wright that we've got now does a job. I mean, the guys don't need to walk right into the first team, but they know what to expect when they turn up to the likes of St Mirren and St Johnstone. So if you've got guys like Scott Wright who can help, maybe players who are a lot more unfamiliar to it, the likes of Danilo, and knowing what to expect and helping your mentality for that, and right, we've been here before sort of thing, then I don't see the any harm in it. I think if they're good enough, then 100%. But it is just that case of trying to recognise who is good enough at what things and would that apply to us, because we've seen, I know there was more than one issue to do with it, but even when Michael O'Halloran signed for Rangers, he was phenomenal against us because he had that space to run into. But then when you're playing for Rangers and you're playing against two banks of five, you don't get that space. So it's about who's good and what are they good at. Does it translate? So I think the likes of Shankland, I would 100% look at. I don't think it will be feasible. But also Jamie McGrath at Aberdeen. I like the likes of... I did like the look of Duke at Aberdeen as well last year. Don't think he's had that great a year this year. Miovski's too hit and miss. Yuan at Hibs. I really like the look of Yuan at Hibs. And I think Mika at Motherwell could be pretty good, by the way. His finishing's pretty excellent.
Yeah, is that Mika Bereth on loan from Arsenal, is it, I believe? Yeah. I think
so,
yeah.
I think he's shooting at a rate about scoring in one in every 5 or 6 shots or something at the minute.
Yeah, and had a bad injury to start, didn't he? I think he had a bad injury when he first came in. I might be wrong on that, but so he's doing really well. Iain, what's your thoughts on it then? Lawrence Shanklin, like Reiss said, is it something we should be open to? And are there any players that come to mind for you? I think for me, there's like Connor Barron for Aberdeen. I think his contract's up at the end of the season. You've also got Lennon Miller at Motherwell who's flying. I think he's just re-signed, to be fair. So Motherwell are doing what they should, and they're trying to make sure they get a huge fee for the player. What's your thoughts on it? Are there anyone out there that you think Rangers should be looking at when it comes to January?
Yeah, I mean, all the ones you mentioned, I'd be all for. To be honest, I think we need more Scottish guys, not just for quota reasons, but possibly Jack's leaving this summer. You don't know. I'd imagine he'll stay, but if he left, that's another Scottish guy that's carrying on from like Arfield, McGregor and stuff. So we need to fill that. We all speak about how we missed out on Lewis Ferguson. We messed that up. Doig, I don't know if that was ever realistic with sort of Barisic and Yilmaz, but there's just so many times that we've missed out and just made a mess of it. It's just snobbery. It's so weird. Like any Rangers fan you speak to seems to say, "Oh yeah, we need more Scottish players." But then when it comes to it, you just see Twitter's full of, "Oh, he plays for Aberdeen. He's not good enough. He's for here. He's not good enough." But as Reiss touched on, every successful Rangers team is built with a core Scottish guys. I don't want to say the phrase "who get it," but who understand the league. And as Reiss said, what's going to Motherwell, going to Aberdeen, going to Hibs. You're hated. Whereas guys coming from abroad, that takes them months to adjust to that, to get used to that. It's just a head start before we even get going. The only other name I would throw in there is the Kilmarnock boy Watson. He scored at Parkhead. I think I've not seen him too much. I'm not going to sit and say I scout him every week, but if you're 18, you're getting a regular game at this level, you've got something about you. I think he's done quite well for under 19s, under 21s at times as well. I think that's the key for me. See guys who are coming up through under 18s, under 21s. There's so much talent in there. I saw a scout thing the other day about the boy that's at Fulham, the centre back. I think he's on loan in Belgium just now, sort of running the show by the sounds of it. There's so much players there that if we can get them in early, get them that homegrown status, it could change us completely. And suddenly we're the guys with a Lewis Ferguson selling on for 10, 15 million. So, yeah, I'd rather see us spend the money on a youngish domestic player than carry on the Dessers, Lammers type experiments anymore. I'm sick of them.
Yeah, I think we're at that point there where we have to start taking a risk with domestic players, don't we? We've seen enough kind of slip through our fingers and move on and do really well at other levels. And I think it is something the club will be looking at, to be honest with you. There might be a realization that, they might have to pay some higher fees that they don't want to pay to other domestic-based clubs, but ultimately it might improve the league as well. It keeps the money in the league. That's maybe not the best way to look at it from a Rangers perspective. But we've got to be honest, sometimes you want the best for Scottish football. You want it to grow, and that'll only benefit of us. So it's certainly something that I'm sure the club will look at. There's a lot of good comments here. There's a lot about Shankland. Paul McGarrigle's saying Hearts will want 4 or 5 million. Don't know if they could demand that with 18 months left in their deal, but listen, he's their player. They can ask for whatever they want. David Hutchinson here saying that Shankland's from Baillieston. He's a true clue. If we've put in a bid, he'll definitely put in a transfer request. Well, you never know. And Chris here saying about Shankland as well. Shankland's a must-buy for me. Scottish, relatively cheap, scores goals, and is a Jares fan. And I'm just going to bring this one up as well because RFC 72 agrees with me completely, which is kind of rare these days. So Conor Barron and Leonard Miller is the two Scots we should go for. So I didn't even see your comment, RFC 72, before I said that there. So we're clearly on the same wavelength on that one. So yeah, it was a good discussion. I think most people feel the kind of same way on that one. And just ending on Lawrence Shankland, I think he's definitely someone I'd like to see the club go for at this stage without it breaking the bank. Let's put it that way. If we can make a deal with Hearts, then go for it. But if Hearts want to keep hold of the player and let his contract run down, that's completely up to them. And I'm sure Rangers will let them do that without going wild for the signing, let's put it that way. So just before we finish up the pod, we'll have a wee look towards Sunday. Rangers return, finally. International break is over. Maybe maybe a lot of people don't like hearing that. Maybe there's a lot of Scotland followers here, but I just can't wait for Rangers to return, right? That's just the way I look at it. So I don't mean to offend anyone on that one. We visit Aberdeen on Sunday. Cologne will be looking to build on the positive momentum he's created before the break. I think arguably it probably came at a bad time for Rangers in terms of performances and results, but I think if you spoke to Philippe Clement, he would probably say it's came at a good time for him. He's now got 2 weeks to work with the players, sit down. Fitness was something he spoke about, really wanting to work with, and again, it's another 2 weeks for this Rangers team to get going with his methods and things like that. Ian, I'll come to you first. What would you like to see kind of continue from Rangers this weekend? What has really impressed you with Philippe Clement's start, and what do you want to see really again at Aberdeen this weekend to keep this momentum going in the league?
The main thing is that Clement's made me look forward to Rangers games again, and that's the most simple compliment I can give the guy. Because under Bale, I think we all were like, "Oh, we're playing today, let's go." It's very lackadaisical, very turgid to watch. There's no movement. No, it's just boring, all in boring. Whereas now, I don't even think we have a set system, which I quite like. Like, we are pretty fluid. Players move about, tactics change here and there in mid-game. So I like that thing. I don't like having a set, we play this way kind of thing. So that's good. My main thing for Sunday is to not make it a battle, to make it a game of football, because we are better footballers than Aberdeen. I know it didn't look like that at Ibrox recently, but that's my main key thing here. Like, get the ball down, play football, play around them, ignore the chaos, ignore their fans being stupidly up for it, unlike any other game this season, and just make it about football. Because I heard quite a lot before, like, the classic Gerrard line is, "Oh, we need to win the battle first." And no, you don't. Just play football. Just realise that you're a Rangers player, they're an Aberdeen player. I mean, you see Aberdeen fans go to these European games and they're all up for it and they're buzzing, and teams just pass them about and just beat them quite comfortably. They've had a terrible European run, other than that draw in Frankfurt kind of thing. So you can quiet the crowd, you can get an early goal, settle everything down, and just play football. Which I think now, with a manager who has that kind of step back, analyse thing going on a bit better than Beale seemed to have, I'm quite confident for Sunday.
Yeah, I think there's a ruthlessness about Clement that I think he'll he'll really look at these fixtures as just being he's wanting to get through it, and he wants to do it in the way that he talks about in terms of his 4 pillars. I don't think he's going to look at any game, and I don't think he knows enough about Scottish football and the rivalry to really look at this Aberdeen as anything other than a 90 minutes of football, and he'll be going up there and looking to win. Now, of course, Aberdeen really should be, struggling at the moment. They were in the back of a 6-0 defeat the last time they played. I'm sure that you'll see the effects of that at Pittodrie at the weekend. I'm sure they won't be up for it. Maybe lying on that one. Reiss, what's your thoughts on it then? Going to Aberdeen this weekend, Pittodrie, what have you really enjoyed with Clement's system, and what do you want to see? And I'll maybe caveat this with, is there anyone you want to see come in and get an opportunity? Because there are players we haven't really seen a lot of yet, and maybe in terms of minutes, like a Tom Lawrence or a Ridvan Yilmaz. They've played, but they've maybe not played as much as they could have over the last year. So is it a chance for Clement to play them again? What about your Dujon Sterlings, your Kieran Dills? Do you expect to see any of these guys come in, or will he go with what he's been doing lately and look to build upon that?
See, I think maybe the first two, and Yilmaz and Lawrence, I wouldn't really hesitate, and I don't think we'd notice the difference where someone else to come out and one of those guys go in. I personally would play Barisic instead of Yilmaz, to be honest with you. Pittodrie now, but we'll need to wait and see what he does. I think Clement's probably best placed to decide that, to be totally honest with you. But the biggest thing I've enjoyed since he's come in is just how it all seems to be clicking now. They all seem to be a lot more confident in forcing the issue. It doesn't need to be this sort of game of chess and trying to keep the ball 40 yards away from goal to try and find 2 yards, 30 yards away from goal, and then try and keep the ball there to find another 2. It was never this sort of trying to drag somebody out, because teams just weren't willing to do it. They were quite happy to just sit there for like 70 minutes of the game, and then by that point, we'd lost our heads and you were able to be either countered or just frustrated. And we seem a lot more confident in going and forcing the issue now, and that we are going to try and score goals. It's not sort of passive aggressive, it is full blown just trying to score goals soon as. But I think what you say about he will see this just simply as another 3 points is spot on. I think it's so beneficial to perhaps be that uninformed or naive or new to the league, that you do just go there expecting, right, if we do what we can do, then we will win the game. And Aberdeen, as you say, they were battered 6-0. They were played off the park against Hibs at Hampden. How they fluked that, I will never know. I watched the game thinking, I want to get Hibs here. No, I want to get Aberdeen here rather, than Hibs, because at Hibs were so much better than them. And I think with all that considered, you would go, well, we should be winning this, and they're pretty poor this season. But that is just one of the games that they're going to turn up and give everything for.
Oh yeah, they'll definitely turn up. They'll be there on Sunday. They'll be ready for it, as they always are. The less said on that, the better, to be honest with you. I'm sure if Kyle was on his usual Wednesday slot, he would go for them right now. He really doesn't like Aberdeen, but I'm going to be sensible here and not go for it. I'll touch upon I did mention a name there, and this was just something in my head earlier today, and Reiss gave me his thoughts on it. But Tom Lawrence, I thought he was really, really good in the last game. Great ball for Cyril Dessers. And I think there's been a lot of discussion around Sam Lammers in that number 10 role behind the striker. We've been playing Cantwell on the right-hand side. Now, I don't think I could see Lawrence playing on that right-hand side. I'm not really sure he's got the physicality, the mobility for that at this stage. But could you see a Tom Lawrence coming into that number 10 role behind Danilo and Lammers taking a place on the bench? Is that something you'd expect to see, or is it something you would at least like to see?
I would love to see it. I'll say that straight away. I think the big thing is how players have got on in this last fortnight with the internationals being on, because obviously a few players have been away, but when you think there's not that many, I know Cifuentes was obviously away, Yilmaz is away and not playing, Ryan Jack was away and not playing, maybe forgetting one or two there, but I don't think Borna was away, even that's quite a rarity.
I don't think so.
No, so I think we'll see a lot of the guys who were there for this last 10 days or so, just because they'll have a few new instructions taken on, and it probably comes down to 50-50 between Lawrence and Lammers, just who's played better in training, which is fair. That's how things should be. It probably means that Cantwell will get shifted to the right, which I'm not a massive fan of personally, but I understand it just now because we didn't really have any other option out there. I saw quite a lot of comments about like McCausland has to start, McCausland has to play. It's quite a game to throw him into when he's only had one start, I think, to this point. So, I mean,
picked up an injury for Northern Ireland as well.
Exactly, had that knock, so I'd be surprised if he started anyway. So I'd expect Cantwell right, and just for a bit of continuity, I think Lammers will play. But like I said right at the start of that, I'd love it if Lawrence was, because I think he just brings. He not only brings more attacking, but I think he's got that bit of like dig in him, which this kind of fixture you need players who can put the foot in, who can win the ball back, drive the team on. And I've not seen anything like that from Lammers at all. So if Lawrence is 100% ready to go, I'd have no qualms throwing him in. Be all for it.
Okay, so you've gave me most of your team, so you'll just have to give me the rest of it then, Ian. I'm putting you on the spot, so let's hear
it. So Butland's in goal, obviously, because he's just what a guy. Going to have Tav, Goldson, the left centre back going. See, I hate saying this because I was so against Balogun coming in, but he's not put a foot wrong at all. And if I'm thinking who do I trust more out of Davies, Balogun, I don't think Souttar's back yet. I could be wrong there, but I've not heard anything.
Not sure.
We'll know more obviously after the presser, but I'd probably play Balogun just for the power, the speed, the dominance. I know Reiss touched on my off-scale earlier, but I do like him. I think he's got a good finish on him. He's tidy. I think he's a level above Aberdeen. I can see Reiss's face going against me straight away. But I think he is a good player. So
he's got the finishing. He's just not got the decision making. Like he went through and goal and scored their only goal in the game, and then he done the exact same a minute later, and then like tried to chip the keeper and it just went wide. And I was like, just finish it. He could have had a hat trick, but his decision making let him down. He was booked for diving after it, and I just thought, nah, you've not got the mentality for it.
I would, like I said, play Balogun. Just I think he could handle that kind of pace a little bit better. Obviously, they've got Duke as well. I know it's been shocking this season, but he can get a goal. So again, Balogun's pace could combat that kind of attack. So him there. I am Mr. Yilmaz. Like he's my man at left back, but I'll go Borna for this. I don't like the thought of him being targeted the way he was for Hearts. You know what? It's going to be a bit of a rough game. So Borna, I think, has been there, done it. I'd put him in. And then the rest of it sort of picks itself. Jack would say Lundstrom. I think it'll be Lammers in front, but I want Lawrence in front. And then Cantwell, Sima, Danilo. It's going to be that front three, hopefully. So I can't imagine there's too much variation about that. But if you've got a wild card to throw at me, please go for it.
No, I'd love to throw a wild card at you, to be honest. Lawrence was kind of the wild card, but I think it's one of those ones he's been out for such a long time. Then he came back, got injured again. I think they'll you know how much Philippe Clement focuses on the kind of medical side, the sports science side of the game. So I'm sure he'll be someone that's really, they take their time with to bring back in, especially when they've seen the impact he made in his first start. Do you know what I mean? He'll look at him and think, wow, there's a real player in there. I need to manage his minutes properly. So that was the only kind of wild card or curveball I had, to be honest with you. I wish I had more. Reiss, what's your thoughts on the team then for Sunday?
I would agree largely with Ian. I do think we go Borna at left back just because you want to kind of try and limit as many weaknesses as you can. And I think he really probably is the only weakness that you can get at with either of the left backs. If you're a team Aberdeen's quality, obviously the higher up you go, they will be able to pick us off. But Aberdeen, I don't think you give them any marginal gains, so I wouldn't have Ridvan at left back. I think the rest of the team, as Ian says, does really pick itself. It's slim pickings at the moment, and especially when you've got guys injured and stuff. And the Lawrence ones, it's a bit of a coin flip because he draws more fouls than any other player for us. So I think if you can get an Aberdeen, this sounds very, very unsportsmanlike, right? But if you can get an Aberdeen player booked for fouling him, and then potentially end up with Aberdeen down to 10 men, it becomes a much easier game for us, you would think, or easier for us to pick them off. But at the same time, is Tottenham Lawrence physically robust enough to deal with getting consistently fouled and being played for the start? And I think that's where Philippe Clement will edge on the side of caution, especially, as you say, if he's seen his impact before and gone, we need a player like that, because he's already spoken about how he doesn't want to rush a player back soon and then not have him for, say, 6 weeks after.
I think you're starting to look at Tom Lawrence there, Reiss, like Pep Guardiola looks at Jack Grealish, doesn't he? He looks as that guy that can just win him fouls high up the pitch or in transition and things like that. That's the way you're looking at a Tom Lawrence here. I like it. Different way of looking at a game of football, I suppose. Sorry, Ian, I might have cut you off there. Were you going to jump in?
No, I was more thinking, a point I meant to mention was Clement was very big on this, like 10 games in 28 days thing.
Yeah.
So knowing Clement and the fitness thing, I wouldn't be too shocked to actually see Yilmaz because he can't play on Thursday night. And there's just going to be a lot of like taking a player out when he can, putting a player in. Like that's why I'm pretty certain Balogun's starting because he's not going to feature in midweek. Again, I'm sure Lawrence is in the Euro squad. I don't think Dowell is. So again, you could see Dowell. I don't think he's going to start, but if you're looking to the bench, you could see Dowell come on before someone else. Just purely thinking, right, I can play him there. I can't have him here. There's going to be a lot of kind of moving parts for these next few weeks. So that's the one we caveat. There could be a couple of surprises in there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. That's a really good point. I think that is the way that Clement will, of course, he won't base every game around the medical centre and the sports science team, but of course, it's always a big thinking when it comes to him picking his team. So that is a really good point. I wish I could throw a curveball in here and give you a different team, right? But I agree with, I can't remember if you both agreed in the team, but I certainly agreed with Ian's team. So it might be exactly the same. I wish I could say any different and maybe not be as boring, but that's unfortunately what it is. But before we finish up then, let's just get a score line. Reiss, what's the score this weekend?
I will go for 3-0 Rangers.
Nice, confident. Ian, what's your thoughts?
I'm going to go 2-1. I expect to be sweating come 90 minutes, but I think we'll just have enough to get a wee bit of quality over the line.
Yeah, I'm more towards your thinking here, Ian. I think it's always a tight game at Pittodrie. They try and make it difficult, but I'm going to go 3-1. I think it might be tight for a while, but I think ultimately we'll pull away and we'll get another 3 points. And yeah, it's a good way to start this. I was going to say horrendous run of fixtures. It's not really when Rangers are playing so often. It's great to see them play so often, so we'll take it as a positive. But that's us. That's been a really good show. Thanks everyone for getting involved. Remember, find us on all the social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok as well. We're on TikTok. You can find us on all the audio platforms too. If you can't make the live YouTube podcast, you can catch up there every time. And remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video. It really helps us out. It means we can keep doing these things and we appreciate all the support. And all that's left to do now is thank the guests. Reiss, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, mate. Glad to have Rangers back and be back in the pod.
I know I'm counting down the seconds till Sunday, by the way. Absolutely. Ian, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it again.
No, pleasure, mate. Thank you.
Yep, thanks everyone for getting involved in the comments. That was really good. Really enjoyed it. A lot of good interaction in there, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.